Marcus Chin pressed his back against the cold metal wall of the abandoned space station, his breathing shallow as he clutched his plasma rifle. The emergency lighting cast airy red shadows down the corridor, and, somewhere in the darkness ahead, something was hunting him. 3 days ago, he had been part of Terran Defense Force Squad 7, tasked with investigating the distress signal from Research Station Kythera. What they found was a massacre. Bodies drained of blood littered the corridors, and their commanding officer had lasted exactly 47 minutes before something tore through his protective gear like it was made of paper. Now Marcus was alone, the last survivor of his 8-person squad, playing a deadly game of cat and mouse with whatever had turned this research facility into a graveyard. His rifle's power cell showed 60% charge remaining. His water supply would last another day, maybe 2 if he rationed carefully. His chances of survival were approaching 0, and he knew it. The sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere behind him, slow and deliberate. Not the frantic scrambling of someone trying to escape, but the patient stalking of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere left to run. Marcus had mapped every accessible section of the station over the past 3 days. The main hangar was sealed, the escape pods had been systematically destroyed, and the communication array was nothing but twisted metal and sparking wires. He moved forward, his boots making soft clicks against the metal grating. The station had been built by the Kytheran Empire, one of humanity's newer allies in the Galactic Coalition. The architecture was all flowing curves and organic shapes, so different from the practical rectangles and straight lines that humans preferred. It was beautiful, in its way, but right now it felt like a tomb. The research station had been studying something they called the Crimson Archive, though Marcus had never gotten a clear explanation of what that meant. The few surviving data logs he had accessed spoke of ancient bloodlines, genetic memories, and something about preserving the essence of a dying race. It had all sounded like academic nonsense to him at the time. Now, hiding in the shadows while something with superhuman strength and speed hunted him through the corridors, it sounded a lot less like nonsense and a lot more like a very dangerous reality. Marcus rounded a corner and froze. At the far end of the corridor, silhouetted against the pale blue glow of a functioning light panel, stood a figure. Tall, slender, definitely humanoid, but wrong in ways his brain struggled to process. The figure turned toward him, and Marcus caught a glimpse of pale skin and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. He raised his rifle, but the figure was gone before he could fire. Not just quick, but actually gone, as if it had stepped sideways out of reality itself. Marcus's hands shook as he swept the weapon left and right, searching for any sign of movement. Interesting. The voice came from directly behind him. Marcus spun around, finger on the trigger, but found himself face to face with a young woman who looked barely out of her teens. She had long silver hair that seemed to move in a breeze that didn't exist, skin so pale it was almost translucent, and those same reflective eyes he had glimpsed in the corridor. She wore what looked like formal court dress, all flowing fabric and intricate embroidery, completely inappropriate for the sterile environment of a research station. "You're the one who's been leaving those clever little traps," she continued, her voice carrying a faint accent he couldn't place. The improvised explosive in the medical bay, the collapsed doorway in Section 7, the electrified floor panels near the power core. Quite resourceful for a mortal. Marcus kept his rifle trained on her, though something in her posture suggested it wouldn't do him much good. "You killed my squad." "I did not." Her expression remained calm, almost bored. "Though I suspect I know what did. The question is whether you're clever enough to listen to an explanation, or if you're going to waste both our time trying to shoot me with that adorable little toy you're holding." "Try me." She smiled, revealing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. "Very well. My name is Princess Lyralii of Hausnix, last daughter of the Sanguine Courts. This station was researching methods to preserve my people's genetic legacy before our final extinction. What they found instead was something that should have remained buried in the deep archives of our homeworld." Marcus's finger stayed on the trigger, but he didn't fire. Something in her tone suggested she was telling the truth, or at least a version of it. "What kind of something?" "A revenant. A failed experiment from our people's distant past, when we still believed we could cheat death through science rather than accepting it with dignity. The researchers here awakened it while studying our genetic samples, and it has been feeding on anyone it encounters ever since." "You're saying there's something worse than you running around this station?" Princess Lyralii laughed, a sound like silver bells with an undertone of breaking glass. "Oh, mortal soldier, I am many things, but I am not a mindless killer. I feed when I must to survive, yes, but I do not slaughter indiscriminately. A revenant, however, exists only to consume. It will drain every living thing on this station and, then, wait in hibernation until new prey arrives. Marcus studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. She met his gaze steadily, and he found himself believing her despite every rational part of his mind screaming that this was a trap. Why should I trust you? Because, Marcusjan of Terra, your people and mine have more in common than you might think. We both understand that sometimes survival requires difficult choices and unlikely alliances. The fact that she knew his name sent a chill down his spine. How do you know who I am? I've been watching you for 3 days. Reading your personnel file from the station's computers. Learning about the man who has managed to survive where 7 others could not. She took a step closer, and Marcus noticed she cast no reflection in the polished metal wall behind her. You fought in the Proxima Rebellion. Held the line at Firebase Charlie for 18 hours against overwhelming odds. Your commanding officer recommended you for the Medal of Valor, though you turned it down because it felt wrong to accept honors for just doing your job. Marcus's throat felt dry. That's all in my file. The part about feeling guilty for surviving when others didn't? The part about how you've been volunteering for the most dangerous assignments because you think you don't deserve to go home safe when your friends didn't? That wasn't in any file, Marcusjan. That was written in every careful trap you set, every calculated risk you took, every time you drew the Revenant's attention away from the station's few remaining automated systems that might still be recording this encounter for future investigation teams. The rifle felt heavy in his hands. What do you want from me? The same thing you want. To stop the monster that killed your squad and get off this station alive. Princess Lyralii gestured toward the corridor behind her. But I need your help to do it. Why? If you're so powerful, why do you need a mortal soldier? Her expression darkened, and, for the first time since the conversation began, she looked uncertain. Because I am dying, Marcusjan. My people's blood grows thin with each passing generation. We have not had a true feeding in decades, sustaining ourselves on synthesized nutrients that barely keep us functional. The Revenant, however, carries within its corrupted form the pure essence of what we once were. Marcus lowered his rifle slightly. You want to feed on this thing? I want to destroy it before it escapes this station and threatens the wider galaxy. But, to do so, I must temporarily restore enough of my strength to match its power. That requires... She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. It requires the willing gift of life force from someone whose spirit burns bright enough to rekindle what has grown cold within me. The implications of her request hit him like a physical blow. You want my blood. Not to drain you unto death, as the Revenant would. But, yes, I need you to share your life with me, knowing that it will weaken you considerably and that you may not survive the coming confrontation even with my protection. Marcus stared at her, his mind racing. Everything he had been trained to believe told him this was insane. You didn't make deals with monsters. You didn't trust creatures that fed on human blood. You definitely didn't volunteer to let them feed on you. But, he thought about his squad. About Jenkins, who had joined the defense force to pay for his sister's medical treatments. About Patel, who had 3 kids back on Luna Colony. About Captain Morrison, who had been 2 weeks away from retirement when they received this assignment. The Revenant had killed them all, and, if Princess Lyralii was telling the truth, it would kill anyone else who came to investigate this station. If I say yes, and we somehow manage to kill this thing, what happens to me afterward? Princess Lyralii's expression softened, and, for a moment she looked less like an otherworldly predator and more like a young woman carrying an impossible burden. I give you my word, by the ancient compacts that bind my people, that I will see you safely return to your own kind. The sharing of life force creates connections. I would be able to find you anywhere in the galaxy, to know if you were in danger, to come to your aid if needed. Some of my people would consider that a curse. Others might call it a gift. Marcus thought about that for a long moment. He thought about the Revenant, somewhere in the darkness of the station, waiting for its next victim. He thought about the inevitability of more investigation teams, more good soldiers walking into a trap they couldn't possibly understand. He thought about the oath he had sworn when he joined the Terran Defense Force. To protect humanity and its allies against all threats, foreign and domestic, terrestrial and alien, known and unknown. What do you need me to do? Princess Lyralii smiled, and this time there was something like respect in her expression. We go to the central laboratory where the Revenant was awakened. I will need to feed before we face it, and the ritual requires a specific setting. Ancient words must be spoken, old compacts honored. It's not simply a matter of drinking blood like some common parasite. Marcus nodded, shouldering his rifle. Lead the way, Princess. As they moved through the corridors together, Marcus found himself studying his unlikely ally. She moved with fluid grace, her feet making no sound on the metal grating. Every few dozen meters she would pause, head tilted as if listening to sounds he couldn't hear. Once she held up a hand to stop him, and they waited in silence for nearly 5 minutes before she indicated it was safe to continue. The Revenant is hunting in the lower levels, she explained as they walked. It can sense life force, but my people's presence is muted. More difficult to detect. As long as we stay near each other, you should be relatively safe. What exactly is a Revenant? You said it was a failed experiment. Princess Lyralii was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if she was going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice carried centuries of regret. Long ago, my people faced a great plague that was slowly destroying our bloodlines. Some among us believed we could transcend our physical forms entirely, becoming beings of pure essence that could survive anything. The process they developed was flawed. It created creatures that retained our strength and speed but lost everything that made us civilized. They became nothing but hunger and rage. How many of them are there? If the records I accessed are correct, only one specimen was being studied here. But one is more than enough. A Revenant grows stronger with each life it consumes, and this one has had access to an entire research team. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met, and Princess Lyralii paused again. This time her entire body went rigid, and Marcus saw her nostrils flare as if scenting the air. It knows we're here, she whispered. The lights went out. In the absolute darkness that followed, Marcus heard the sound of something large moving through the ventilation system above them. Metal groaned under tremendous weight, and dust rained down from the ceiling panels. Princess Lyralii's hand found his arm, her grip cold even through his tactical gear. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, stay close to me. The Revenant will try to separate us. Can you see in this darkness? Yes. Can you trust me to guide you? Marcus thought about that question for exactly half a second. Do I have a choice? Her laugh was barely audible. Not really. They moved through the darkness together, Princess Lyralii's grip on his arm guiding him around obstacles he couldn't see. Behind them, something roared with a voice like tearing metal, and Marcus felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Whatever was coming for them, it was getting closer. The laboratory is just ahead, Princess Lyralii whispered. Once we're inside, I can seal the doors. But, Marcus, you need to understand something before we continue. The ritual that will restore my strength, there's no going back once we begin. You'll be bound to me until one of us dies, and my people live for a very long time. Marcus could hear something moving in the walls around them now, keeping pace with their progress. Are you trying to give me a chance to change my mind? I'm trying to be honest about what I'm asking of you. Marcus squeezed her hand. Princess, 3 days ago I was a soldier following orders. Right now, I'm the only person who can help you save lives. Maybe lots of lives, if that thing ever gets off this station. I've made my choice. The sound of rending metal echoed through the corridor behind them, followed by a howl that made Marcus's bones ache. Whatever was hunting them had just broken through some barrier, and it was very, very angry. Princess Lyralii pulled him forward, and Marcus ran blind through the darkness, trusting her completely to keep him from crashing into walls or falling down maintenance shafts. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew closer. They reached the laboratory just as the emergency lighting flickered back on, casting everything in that eerie red glow. Princess Lyralii pressed her hand against a biometric scanner beside the door, and Marcus was surprised when it accepted her scan and opened. Research station security protocols, she explained as they rushed inside. I'd been here long enough to gain access to most systems. The laboratory was a mess. Workbenches had been overturned, computer terminals smashed, and what looked like biological samples scattered across the floor. In the center of the room stood a raised platform with intricate symbols carved into its surface, surrounded by equipment Marcus didn't recognize.
Princess Lyralii moved to a control panel and began entering commands.
Heavy blast doors slammed shut behind them, and Marcus heard the whine of force field generators powering up.
"That will hold it for a few minutes," she said. "Maybe less."
Marcus looked around the laboratory, noting the exits and potential defensive positions out of habit.
"How long does this ritual take?"
Princess Lyralii stepped onto the carved platform, and the symbols began to glow with a soft blue light.
"Not long."
"But, Marcus, once I begin, I won't be able to stop. Even if the Revenant breaks through those doors, even if it's about to kill us both.
The ritual must be completed, or we'll both die anyway."
Something slammed into the blast doors from outside, and Marcus saw the force field flicker.
"Then, we'd better hurry," he said, stepping onto the platform beside her.
Princess Lyralii nodded, and began to speak words in a language that hurt Marcus's ears to hear. The symbols beneath their feet grew brighter, and he felt a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body.
Outside, the Revenant roared again, and Marcus realized that in the next few minutes, he would either help save countless lives or die in the attempt. Either way, he thought as Princess Lyralii's ritual began in earnest, it beat sitting in the dark waiting to be hunted.
The carved symbols flared with brilliant light, and Marcus felt his life force beginning to flow toward the vampire princess who stood beside him.
Whatever happened next, there would definitely be no going back.
The sensation was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. It wasn't pain, exactly, though every nerve in his body suddenly felt hyper-aware of its own existence. It was more like being slowly unplugged from himself, as if some essential part of what made him Marcus Chen was flowing out through invisible channels and into the vampire princess who stood facing him on the glowing platform.
Princess Lyralii's appearance was changing as the ritual progressed.
Her pale skin took on a subtle luminescence, her silver hair moved as if stirred by cosmic winds, and her eyes blazed with an inner fire that made looking directly at them almost impossible. Most unsettling of all, Marcus could feel her presence in his mind, not reading his thoughts but somehow sharing the space where they formed. The blast doors shuddered under another impact, and this time the force field flickered and died completely. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Marcus caught a glimpse of what was trying to break in, and his blood ran cold. The Revenant had once been humanoid, but whatever process had created it had twisted its form into something nightmarish. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with arms that stretched almost to its knees and fingers ending in claws that could tear through steel plating. Its skin was a sickly gray-green color, stretched tight over too much muscle and bone. But the worst part was its face, which retained just enough human features to be recognizable while being completely wrong in every possible way. "Don't look at it directly," Princess Lyralii warned, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. "Revenants can induce paralyzing fear in those who meet their gaze." Marcus forced himself to look away, focusing instead on the ritual circle beneath their feet. The symbols were pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat, and he could feel his strength ebbing with each pulse.
But something else was happening too. Where his life force was flowing into Princess Lyralii, he was receiving something in return. Knowledge, mostly. Understanding of things his human mind shouldn't have been able to process. He could sense the Revenant's hunger like a physical presence, an endless void that would never be satisfied no matter how much it consumed. He could feel the network of dormant security systems throughout the research station, systems that Princess Lyralii was now accessing through her enhanced connection to the facility's computers. Most importantly, he could sense the bond forming between himself and the vampire princess, a connection that would persist long after the ritual was complete. The blast doors buckled, metal screaming as claws tore through reinforced barriers like they were made of paper. The Revenant squeezed through the gap it had created, its impossible anatomy allowing it to contort in ways that hurt to watch. "The ritual is nearly complete," Princess Lyralii said, though Marcus wasn't sure if she spoke aloud or directly into his mind. "Whatever you do, don't step off the platform." The Revenant's attention fixed on them immediately, its head turning with predatory focus. When it opened its mouth to roar, Marcus saw rows of needle-sharp teeth and a throat that seemed to descend into infinite darkness. But, instead of charging directly at them, it began to circle the ritual platform, staying just outside the ring of glowing symbols. "It's intelligent," Marcus realized. "It knows what we're doing." "Unfortunately, yes. Revenants retain all the cunning they possessed in life, plus centuries of hunting experience. It won't risk disrupting the ritual until it understands what advantage that might give us." The creature completed its first circuit around the platform and began speaking, its voice a harsh whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Little princess of a dying house, do you really think borrowing life from this mortal will make you strong enough to challenge me?
Princess Lyralii didn't respond, but Marcus felt her concentration waver slightly. The flow of energy between them flickered, and several of the ritual symbols dimmed.
The Revenant laughed, a sound like breaking bones.
I have consumed 43 researchers, 12 security guards, 7 custodial staff, and 8 soldiers. Each life I take adds to my strength, while you have been fasting for decades, slowly withering away like all your pathetic kind. Don't listen to it, Marcus said, though his voice came out weaker than he intended.
It's trying to break your concentration. Oh, the mortal speaks.
The Revenant's attention shifted to Marcus, and he had to fight every instinct not to meet its gaze.
Tell me, little soldier, do you know what your princess friend isn't telling you? Do you know what the ritual you're participating in will really do? Marcus felt Princess Lyralii's mental presence spike with alarm, and, suddenly, he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. The bond you're creating isn't temporary, Marcus Chen of Terra. It's permanent. Absolute.
You'll be able to feel her hunger as if it were your own, her pain as if someone were driving knives through your heart. And, when she feeds, as she inevitably must to survive, you'll experience every moment of it through her senses. The symbols beneath their feet pulsed brighter, and Marcus felt the ritual approaching its conclusion. But the Revenant's words had planted a seed of doubt in his mind, and that doubt was affecting the energy flow between him and Princess Lyralii. More than that, the creature continued, beginning to pace around the platform again, you'll never be able to form meaningful relationships with your own kind again.
How can you love a human woman when you can feel another's presence in every quiet moment?
How can you maintain friendships when you carry the emotional echoes of someone who has lived for centuries and seen civilizations rise and fall?
Is it true?
Marcus asked, directing the question at Princess Lyralii through their growing connection. Her mental response carried depths of regret that made his chest ache.
Not entirely.
The bond can be severed, but it requires both parties to willingly sacrifice something precious to make the break. I should have explained the full implications before we began. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the decision he had made and its true consequences.
The Revenant was right about some things.
The bond forming between them would change him in ways he couldn't fully understand. He would carry a piece of Princess Lyralii with him for the rest of his life, sharing her experiences and emotions whether he wanted to or not.
But he thought about his squad again.
About the people who would die if the Revenant ever escaped this station. About the oath he had sworn and the responsibilities that came with it. I don't care, he said, opening his eyes and looking directly at Princess Lyralii.
Do what you have to do.
The vampire princess smiled, and Marcus felt her gratitude wash over him like warm sunlight. The ritual symbols blazed with renewed intensity, and the energy flow between them became a rushing torrent that left Marcus gasping. The Revenant snarled in frustration and lunged toward the platform, but the moment its claws crossed the boundary of the ritual circle, it was thrown backward by an invisible force. The creature hit the far wall hard enough to crack the reinforced concrete, then rose to its feet with inhuman speed.
Clever, little princess.
But your borrowed power won't last long, and I have eternity to wait for it to fade. Princess Lyralii stepped down from the platform, and Marcus felt the ritual complete itself with a sensation like lightning running through his veins. When he looked at her now, she seemed to glow with inner fire, her movements fluid and predatory. More importantly, he could sense her strength, and it was considerable. You're assuming I intend to fight you fairly, she said, gesturing toward the laboratory's control panel. The room's lights went out, plunging everything into absolute darkness. But Marcus found he could still see, though not with his eyes. Through his connection to Princess Lyralii, he could perceive heat signatures, electrical fields, and the subtle gravitational distortions caused by mass in motion. The Revenant stood out like a beacon, its stolen life force burning bright against the background darkness.
Interesting trick, the creature hissed. But I don't need light to hunt.
It moved then, crossing the laboratory in a single bound and striking at the place where Princess Lyralii had been standing. But she was no longer there, having flowed sideways through space in a way that Marcus's enhanced perception could follow, but his rational mind couldn't quite accept.
The fight that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed.
Both combatants moved at speeds that blurred the line between physics and magic, striking with enough force to crack walls and shatter equipment. Princess Lyralii fought with elegant precision, each movement flowing seamlessly into the next like a deadly dance. The Revenant fought with raw savagery, its attacks powerful enough to cave in a human skull but lacking the finesse of its opponent. Marcus tried to stay out of the way, but the laboratory wasn't large enough to provide much space for spectators. When the Revenant's wild swing shattered a support beam and sent debris raining down toward him, Princess Lyralii was there instantly, her body shielding him from the falling concrete. "You need to get to the control room," she said, not even breathing hard despite the incredible pace of the battle. "The station's self-destruct system can be activated from there." "What about you?" "I'll keep it busy." "But, Marcus, you need to understand something. If I fall here, the bond between us won't die with me. You'll carry the echo of my death for the rest of your life." The Revenant's roar interrupted their conversation, and Princess Lyralii spun away to meet its next attack. Marcus watched them clash again, seeing how each exchange was gradually wearing down his ally's stolen strength. The ritual had made her powerful, but not immortal, and the Revenant had decades of accumulated life force to draw upon. Marcus made his way to the laboratory's exit, using his enhanced perception to navigate around the ongoing battle. The control room was 3 levels up, accessible through a maintenance shaft that connected to the station's primary computer core. If he could reach it and activate the self-destruct sequence, they could eliminate the Revenant and ensure it never threatened anyone else. The journey through the maintenance shafts was a nightmare of cramped spaces and unstable surfaces, made worse by the vibrations from the ongoing battle below. Twice he had to stop and brace himself as the entire structure shook from some particularly violent impact. Through his connection to Princess Lyralii, he could feel her growing exhaustion and the accumulating damage from the Revenant's attacks. He reached the control room to find it had been partially damaged by the creature's earlier rampage through the station. Several computer terminals were smashed beyond repair, and the main display screen flickered intermittently. But the core systems were still functional, and Marcus's enhanced perception allowed him to interface with the station's computers in ways that shouldn't have been possible for a human. The self-destruct system required 3 separate authorization codes, 2 of which had been entered by research staff before they died. Marcus found the 3rd code in the station commander's personal files, an alphanumeric sequence that would trigger a fusion reaction in the primary power core. The explosion would be powerful enough to vaporize the entire facility and anything within a 50-kilometer radius. His finger hovered over the activation key as he considered the implications. Princess Lyralii hadn't mentioned whether she could survive a fusion explosion, and he was fairly certain he couldn't. The escape pods had been destroyed, and the nearest rescue ship was weeks away. Activating the self-destruct would accomplish their mission, but it would almost certainly be a suicide run. Through their bond, he felt Princess Lyralii's desperate struggle as the Revenant's attacks finally began to overwhelm her defenses. One of her ribs cracked under a particularly brutal blow, and Marcus felt the pain as if it were his own. She was losing, and when she fell, the creature would be free to hunt throughout the galaxy. Marcus entered the final authorization code and placed his hand on the activation key. "Princess," he said, knowing she would hear him through their connection. "I'm sorry." Her mental response carried surprise, understanding, and something that might have been affection. "Thank you, Marcus Chen. For everything." Marcus pressed the key, and alarms began blaring throughout the station. An automated voice announced the beginning of the self-destruct sequence, counting down from 10 minutes. In the laboratory far below, he felt the Revenant's rage as it realized what was happening. But, instead of trying to escape, the creature doubled its attacks on Princess Lyralii, apparently determined to kill her before the station's destruction claimed them all. Through their bond, Marcus experienced every blow, every torn muscle and cracked bone, every moment of agony as the vampire princess fought a losing battle against an enemy that no longer cared about its own survival. Marcus ran. He sprinted through the corridors, using his enhanced perception to navigate the fastest route back to the laboratory. The countdown continued in the background, 8 minutes now, and he could feel Princess Lyralii's strength fading with each passing second. He burst into the laboratory to find her backed against the far wall, her elegant dress torn and bloodied, her silver hair matted with dark stains. The Revenant advanced on her slowly, savoring its victory. It had taken significant damage as well, with deep gashes across its torso and one arm hanging at an unnatural angle, but it was still functional while she was clearly at the end of her resources. Marcus raised his plasma rifle and fired, the energy bolt striking the Revenant's center mass and spinning it around. The creature snarled and turned toward him, its eyes blazing with hatred. The mortal returns to die with his mistress. How touching. 6 minutes until detonation, Marcus said, backing slowly toward the ritual platform. Even if you kill both of us, you're not getting off this station.
Perhaps not.
But I can ensure that your deaths are particularly unpleasant. The Revenant lunged toward him, and Marcus dove sideways, firing his rifle on full automatic. The energy bolt struck the creature repeatedly, each impact sending it staggering but not dropping it. Marcus rolled behind an overturned workbench as claws raked through the air where his head had been.
Marcus!
Princess Lyraliai's voice was weak but determined.
The platform. Bring it here.
Marcus looked at her in confusion, then realized what she was asking.
The ritual circle was still active, its symbols glowing faintly in the darkness.
If he could lure the Revenant onto the platform, she might be able to use the residual energy to finish it. He broke cover and ran toward the center of the laboratory, firing over his shoulder to keep the creature's attention focused on him.
The Revenant followed, its massive form moving with deadly grace despite its injuries.
Marcus leaped onto the ritual platform and spun around, rifle raised. The Revenant stopped just outside the circle of symbols, its head tilted in suspicious consideration. Clever, but not clever enough, it hissed.
I won't be tricked into your little trap a second time. 4 minutes to detonation.
Princess Lyraliai pushed herself away from the wall, blood streaming from a dozen wounds. You're right, creature.
He can't trick you into the circle.
She stepped onto the platform beside Marcus, her presence causing the symbols to flare with renewed light.
But I can drag you into it.
What happened next took place too quickly for Marcus to fully process. Princess Lyraliai launched herself at the Revenant with the last of her strength, not trying to hurt it but simply to grapple with it. The creature was stronger and faster, but her desperate attack caught it off guard. They crashed to the laboratory floor in a tangle of limbs, rolling and struggling just outside the ritual circle. For a moment it looked like the Revenant would break free and kill her before she could accomplish whatever she was planning. But then, Marcus understood, and he threw himself into the fight as well, grabbing the creature's legs and trying to pull it toward the platform. The three of them struggled on the edge of the ritual circle, Marcus and Princess Lyraliai working together to force the Revenant across the boundary. The creature realized what they were attempting and fought with renewed fury, its claws opening deep gashes across Marcus's arms and chest. But desperation gave them strength, and inch by inch they dragged the thrashing monster onto the glowing platform. The moment all three of them were within the circle, Princess Lyraliai spoke a single word in her ancient language, and the symbols exploded with brilliant light. Marcus felt power flowing through the platform, but not the gentle exchange of life force from the original ritual. This was raw, chaotic energy that burned like fire in his veins. The Revenant screamed as the same energy tore through its corrupted form, finally, overwhelming the stolen life force that had sustained it for so long.
2 minutes to detonation.
The creature's body began to dissolve, its stolen essence returning to whatever cosmic reservoir it had been drawn from. But its death throes were violent enough to shatter the ritual platform and send cracks spreading through the laboratory floor. Marcus found himself lying beside Princess Lyraliai in the wreckage, both of them barely conscious and bleeding from multiple wounds. Through their bond, he could feel her life force flickering like a candle in a hurricane.
Can you make it to the escape pods? He asked, though he already knew the answer. The pods were destroyed, remember?
Her smile was weak but genuine. Besides, I'm not sure I could survive the trip even if they weren't. Marcus struggled to his feet, then helped her stand.
There's got to be something. A cargo shuttle, maintenance craft, anything. 1 minute to detonation.
Princess Lyraliai leaned against him, her strength almost gone.
Marcus, there's something I need to tell you. About the bond between us.
Whatever it is, it can wait until we're off this station.
No, it can't.
She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the dying light from the shattered ritual circle. The bond works both ways. I can share my life force with you, just as you shared yours with me. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with his injuries.
What are you saying? I'm saying,